Welcome to the 2025 AFC East preview here on the Locked On Network.
This is the 2025 Locked On NFL season preview, only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the 2025 AFC East divisional preview here on the Locked On Network. I am Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. I'm joined by John Butchco of Locked On Jets, Joe Marino of Locked On Bills, and Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots. And we're here to set the stage for the 2025 season in the AFC East, a division that as of late has been owned by the Buffalo Bills. So, Joe, put your earmuffs on. Can you mute those headphones? Yeah, there you go. That's great. We're going to spend the first portion of the preview talking about the Buffalo Bills. In particular, they are, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, the heaviest odds-on favorite to win their division of any team in the NFL this year. They are listed at minus 270 on FanDuel Sportsbook. That's quite a large percentage tilt towards the Buffalo Bills. And Joe, I'll actually let you start things off so we can get you out of the way here early. The Buffalo Bills will not win the division in 2025 because of what?
Josh Allen got injured and Mitch Trubisky's the starting quarterback. I think that's the most likely path for that to happen. I think there's a level of performance that we expect from the Bills under Sean McDermott and Josh Allen that they're going to be a tough team to bounce. And so I do think that there's a lot about the Bills that needs to continue for them to maintain their success. And I think nothing is more important than Josh Allen's availability. But the other reason would be that one of these other teams catches lightning in a bottle, whether that's New England in year one of Mike Vrabel and Drake May and the ceiling that he has to develop into. Certainly the Dolphins have been the closest team. If Tua's healthy and that defense can come together, we know that they can be an explosive offense. That would be a challenge. They've taken the Bills down to the last week of the season before. And then for the Jets, can they be this physical team that's going to play bully ball, that can run the ball, play good defense, and, give themselves a chance to win games? So, those things could happen. But if it's about the Bills, it's about Josh Allen and his durability. And if he remains, with his consecutive start streak, the longest in the league, I think that'll give the Bills a really good shot at winning this thing again.
Now, Nick, I want to give you a chance here because New England favored in a lot of games this year. And talking about Mike Vrabel coming in and what the coaching staff looked like last year versus what the expectation is for the coaching staff looking like this year under Mike Vrabel. Talk a little bit about your outlook for New England to be that team that could catch lightning in a bottle and maybe chase down the Bills in the AFC East.
Well, I think Joe nailed it. I mean, if you look at the Bills, it might be boring, but it's the truth. It's the reality of the situation. If Josh Allen's out there, they're going to win the division. But for the Patriots to catch lightning in the bottle, as you asked, Kyle, is the idea of Vrabel has this ability to get more out of a team than he should if you just look at the roster. That's kind of his reputation throughout the league. And the Patriots have upgraded in a bunch of different spots. The problem for them is they were so bad last year. I find it hard to believe that you couldn't upgrade on so many spots. So, I mean, I trust Vrabel more than the other coaches in the division. I think he's, McDermott is good. I think Vrabel is good. I think if you gave Vrabel a Sean McDermott roster, Vrabel could probably win with a Sean McDermott roster like Sean has. So I would put Vrabel ahead of easily the two other coaches in the division. And I would also say, Kyle, this defense is really going to be the reason why this team would make a jump. Offensively, I still think they'll probably be the middle of the pack at best. But their defense, if they get Christian Gonzalez back for week one with Carlton Davis added, and the defensive line that's versatile and pretty talented, I think that's how they would find their path, is that they're a very tough defense, very physical and violent defense. Vrabel does enough with the details, wins some close games. The upgrades on offense give them just enough, especially in the red zone. And they somehow, some way find a way to win 11 games, which I find hard to believe. But you ask me for the path, that would be the path.
John, I'll kick this to you here now, where the Jets, really interesting team to forecast. And we're talking about potentially catching lightning in a bottle. And there's a lot of new from the top down within this organization, from the general manager, the head coach, the coaching staffs, the quarterback. How do you perceive New York's ability to catch lightning in a bottle this year? And what does the pathway look like for doing that, and any other avenues in which you see the math potentially working out to challenge Buffalo?
I think that the pathway is somewhere between narrow and non-existent for the Jets to win the division this year. I think for the Jets, the goal is not really that big season. This is a very different training camp than they had in 2023 and 2024. Those years, they went all in to try and win a Super Bowl around Aaron Rodgers, which, as we now know, and as I think a lot of people that were being honest would admit, was a really flawed plan, and there was a really narrow pathway for that. And the Jets borrowed a lot of future resources. They pushed a lot of cap hits to 2025. They sent out a lot of draft picks along the way of players who could be here developing. So I don't think the division is really a realistic goal for the Jets this year. I think Joe was right. The only way I see Buffalo not winning this division is if something happens to Josh Allen. But even if that happens, I mean, I think New England is there. I think New England's a really intriguing team with Drake May and Vrabel now running things. I really don't see a realistic way for the Jets to win the division this year. They have some good top-end talent. The pieces are there for this to be a better team than people expect. This is not the Jets of 2019 with Adam Gase. This is not the Jets of 2017 with Todd Bowles. Those were teams that really, outside of Jamal Adams, had no talent at all. There are some good pieces here to build around in the future. And if Aaron Glenn proves to be the right coach, this could get turned around sooner rather than later. But I don't think this is a 2025 thing. The day the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers, I think most people who were being realistic saw that they were borrowing future resources. And one of the most common comments that was made at that point was, Jets are going to be bad in 2025, so they better make it happen in 2023 and 2024. That obviously did not happen. Now we're here in 2025, and it's really a reset year for the Jets. This is not a year where the team has realistic hopes of winning the division.
What's an interesting foil there is where the Miami Dolphins are at as a team that comes in with pressure on the general manager, pressure on the head coach. It's year 4. This team went to the playoffs twice in the first 2 seasons under Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier. Of course, Chris Grier preceded Mike McDaniel with the Brian Flores era, a reset that goes back to 2019 was kind of that year that, John, you're talking about with the Jets. That was kind of that year in 2019 for Miami, and it strung together winning seasons. But this long-standing playoff drought has kind of seeped into what everybody's looking for from the Dolphins this year, and they are a team that has notable talent between Tyreek Hill as a potential bounce-back candidate and Jalen Waddle is a group that went for over 3,000 combined receiving yards in 2022 when McDaniel first got here. But some of the bets that this team placed last year really faltered, and it led to them being very handcuffed on offense. And then you throw in the Tua Tagovailoa missing 6 games on top of that, and it was just too big of a hill to climb. So for Miami, where you have these 2 other teams in the division where you're in foundational years, where you might be able to catch lightning in a bottle, the Dolphins are trying to push different buttons to kind of recapture what worked within their offense in previous years. And the biggest challenge that the Dolphins have for challenging Buffalo is health. And the second is the Bills kick their rear end every time they play them, and they have for 13 of the last 14 times these 2 football teams have played, Buffalo has won. It's been a riddle that they have just not been able to solve. So as you forecast how the Bills would not win the East from Miami's perspective and side of things, you have to try to assume that the personnel moves that they have made, and we'll talk about where each one of these teams is improved, but they tried to get better and more physical in the trenches to try to match and play more complementary football. And then there's also the dynamic of health, which is to some degree uncontrollable. And you would probably need some fortunes in the way of the Buffalo Bills, as we just talked about with Josh Allen and what he means to that football team. So the Bills very rightfully in a very secure place as far as the betting odds atop the AFC East. But each one of these teams has some needle moving talent. And we're going to talk about that next here on the program. Make sure everybody sticks with us.
This episode is brought to you by our friends over there at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up and college football is not far behind. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or even breakout running backs this season, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the game. Plus, they offer weekly flyer options already for week 1, where Dak Prescott's max discount for kickoff against the Eagles is more than 0.5 passing yards. Take advantage of that inside of the Prize Picks app today. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDON NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDON NFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game.
One of the cool things that we did as a network over the summer was everybody voted, and we came up with a top 100 list. And I know everybody on the panel, we talked in the pre-show a little bit, had some thoughts, feelings, emotions about how that outcome played out as far as teams being well represented or potentially not well represented. So, Nick, I want to start with you because New England had one player that was voted on the top 100, and it was a player who has an extremely bright future in Christian Gonzalez. Talk to us a little bit about Gonzalez and his outlook for year 3 for him as a player, and then any players that maybe didn't make the list that you feel like could be challenging for when this exercise is repeated again next year.
All right, so looking at Gonzalez, first of all, he's going to be healthy. He hurt his hamstring going back a couple weeks ago, has not practiced since then. The Patriots told the media that he would be ready by week 1. It sounds like they're confident, they're optimistic, but we'll see. He's got to be out there. I think he is one of the best young corners in football. The biggest beef I had with the top 100 regarding the Patriots was I would have had Gonzalez ahead of Sauce Gardner. I know some people think that's sacrilegious, but Gardner wasn't good last year. And Gonzalez plays a lot more man coverage than Gardner does. I mean, Gonzalez has been put on an island against some of the very best receivers in football and has consistently, if not shut them down completely, he has limited them. I mean, we're talking about the Tyreek Hills, the A.J. Browns. It's a list of top guys. So Gonzalez is truly special. I think he could end up being a top 3 corner in football this year if he's healthy. The other guy I would say, if you're looking at possibly making the list, of course, people would say Drake May, but the first name I would go to is actually Christian Barmore. He was out last year with blood clots, came back, then had to leave again with blood clots. He's had a terrific camp. The Patriots have managed him. He has the talent to be one of the better interior defensive linemen in football. And of course, he's next to Milton Williams. I think he's a better football player than Milton Williams, but he's got to stay healthy and he's got to keep that motor running. So, May and Barmore and Gonzalez, that is most of that core. And I'll throw a wild card out at you. I don't know if he's going to get the opportunities or not, but Travion Henderson is an impact rookie, and there's a lot of excitement around him, and for all the right reasons. And I think that guy can impact an offense immediately, and I think he's going to be one of the most critical weapons in the entire division offensively for any of the 4 teams. So I think Henderson could have a shot on the very outside of maybe surprising some people.
Joe, I'll go to you next. You had 2 represented here. John, you're going to go last because the Jets got 3 voted into the top 100. But Joe, you had the highest ranked player in Josh Allen, ranked as the 3rd best player in the NFL top 100 per the Locked On panel. Christian Benford comes in 81st on this list, and very proud to see Christian Benford on there as somebody who I don't think it maybe gets the accolades nationally that he maybe deserves. Talk a little bit about each one of those 2, and then any omissions that you took particular exception to. I know you've got at least one.
Yeah. Boy, Nick coming in strong saying he'd have Christian Gonzalez above Sauce Gardner. Well, I'd put Christian Benford above Sauce Gardner too, but I had all 3 on my ballot. I will say that. I don't want to split hairs over the Josh Allen thing. I think he's too low at number 3. I think case in point is the only other player is a cornerback, and this team went to the AFC Championship and took Kansas City to the brink. I think that tells you everything you need to know about Josh Allen. I was very happy to see Christian Benford on this list. Allowed fewer yards per coverage snap than the defensive player of the year last year in Patrick Surtain on a pass defense that was pretty shaky in Buffalo last year. But not having Deion Dawkins on this list or Spencer Brown, something I cannot reconcile and I cannot understand. Dawkins has made the last 4 Pro Bowls. I know that's not the end-all be-all, but this Bills passing game is really unique. The Bills run the highest percentage of 5-man protections in the NFL by 7% above the number 2. That means nobody gets any help. These tackles are on an island all the time. Oh, by the way, it's a top 5 rushing offense, however you want to measure the success of a run game. And a lot of that's rooted in these tackles executing longer pulls. So for Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown to be left off this list makes me ask a lot of questions about why, who doesn't know what's going on here? Because I think those are great exceptions. I think you can talk about James Cook, you talk about Greg Rousseau, you can talk about Terrell Bernard, but to me, there had to be a spot for both Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. And it's good to see Benford get the recognition. And of course, Josh Allen's high on the list, but should have been a little higher.
Miami checked in here with 2, one of which did not play a single down last year, which to continue to roll through that theme of availability for the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill at 25, Bradley Chubb at 94. Chubb should be a big addition back for the Dolphins. And I think the interesting piece of this is they've now added Matthew Judon in the final week of training camp to go with former first-round pick Chop Robinson and former first-round pick Jalen Phillips, who played in 3.5 games last year. How do they choose to implement a group of 4 on the edge like that? I think will be really interesting. And if I had to pick an edge to be in this top 100 next year, it probably would not be Bradley Chubb, who took a pay cut to stay in Miami. Chop Robinson, after his rookie season where he was an absolute monster through the back half of the season, he really struggled in the first half. And it was about week 8, week 9 was kind of where you felt like the light bulb came on for him. And he looked like a different player. I think that's a player for Miami that I would be looking for to get accolades, but there's a lot of potential sharing of pressures and sacks of opposing quarterbacks. And the Dolphins are putting an exceptional amount of pressure on their front 7 to do the heavy lifting this year when you consider what their cornerback room looks like and the questions that exist there. I'd say Zach Sealer is one of the more underrated interior defensive linemen in all of football. He got a new contract extension, and that in and of itself was an accomplishment because the Dolphins didn't pay anybody long-term money this offseason after they paid everybody long-term money last year. Sealer gets a 3-year, $60+ million contract extension. I think it ended up being 64 was the base value with incentives then stacked on top of that. I think Sealer has a great chance, double-digit sacks in each of the last 2 seasons, and he's a really good run defender to be on this list again next year. And I probably would not pick Tyreek Hill to be the most likely Dolphins wide receiver to be on this list next year as well. Tyreek missed all of the offseason program. He missed all but 2 weeks of training camp. And the Dolphins have been bracing for amidst what the end of the year looked like, in which Tyreek Hill voiced potential doubt in wanting to be there. Jalen Waddle's gotten all of the reps as the marquee option in the passing offense for all of the offseason program, all but 2 weeks of training camp. He has the pre-existing chemistry with Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa, in talking about Tyreek Hill, as recently as the 3rd week in training camp, said, we got different personalities. You can't just say what he said and then walk it back. He's got some work to do, and we're working on it. I think Jalen Waddle's primed for a huge year, and that potentially comes at the expense of Tyreek Hill having 150+ targets, 170 targets like he did his first 2 seasons in Miami. So I think this list for Miami will look very different next year. John, feel pretty good about the stability of your guys in the top 100. You have 3. Sauce Gardner, 28, Quinnen Williams at 62, and then Garrett Wilson at 79. 2 of those 3 getting big long-term contract extensions from the Jets this offseason.
It's really funny because I know 2 of my colleagues just here said that they had corners that should be ahead of Sauce Gardner, where my biggest issue was Derek Stingley finishing ahead of Sauce Gardner on the list. And I'm not here to defend Sauce Gardner's 2024 season. It was clearly a step down from what he did his first 2 years in the league. But my question when that happened, Stingley went ahead of Gardner, was, is this a list of performances in 2024, or is this a list of the best players right now? And I think when your first 2 years are as good as Sauce Gardner's were, you should get a pass for maybe a down year in 2024, which, by the way, was still better than most corners in the NFL are capable of performing. But I was somewhat surprised when I first saw the list and noticed that the Jets had the most top 100 players in the AFC East. But it's actually not a huge shock when you think about the job the previous GM Joe Douglas did, because Douglas was pretty good at bringing in impact talent in the top with his top 50 draft selections. There were some misses. Obviously, Zach Wilson was a really notable one, but he actually did a really good job hitting on his first on picks in round 1 and round 2. Where he really struggled was building depth and hitting round 3 through 7. He was not very good at finding role players. And that's one of the issues with the Jets this year. The Jets are not projected to be a bad team because they lack top-end talent, as I mentioned before, the way they did maybe under Adam Gase or Todd Bowles. Their issue is that they really can't afford to suffer any injuries, and they don't have any guys backing up their stars. I thought the list was fair to the Jets. I didn't really see anybody who belonged who was not part of the list. The guy I have my eye on for this year is Quincy Williams, who is the brother of Quinnen Williams, who appeared on the list. He's a linebacker, a real success story for the Jets. The Jets actually claimed him off waivers from Jacksonville in 2021 and spent a couple of years as like an okay starter, then really broke out in 2023 and was named a first team All-Pro. He's in a contract year, so he's going to be plenty motivated. But I also think he's a really good fit for Aaron Glenn's defense. Glenn likes to blitz his linebackers a lot. Williams is extremely fast. I see him blitzing a lot off the edge, using his speed. I think he could be a 4 to 6 sack guy this year, in addition to providing great run defense and solid coverage. So that's the guy I have my eye on for next year. But other than that, I mean, when you lead the league when you lead the division in players on the top 100 list, you're probably not going to complain all that much.
Well, there's great talent on each one of these teams, and each one of these teams has a different outlook, as we've discussed already. But we're going to talk about where each one of these teams got better next here on this AFC East 2025 preview. Make sure you guys stick with us.
Today's 2025 NFL season preview is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel Sportsbook. And as you all know, FanDuel, they are America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, with the NFL season right around the corner, they want to get you in the game with an offer that you simply can't miss, because new users can bet just $5 and win up to $300 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. And you can use that all across the app for NFL season futures. You can even go through what I do on my Sunday morning routine. I like to pull up my phone, go into the FanDuel Sportsbook app, and then I'll go through the morning games. I'll pick all the money lines, and then the primetime slate, I'll go through and I'll do player props and parlay them together inside of FanDuel. That's part of my routine. But FanDuel, once again, wants to make sure if you sign up today as a brand new customer, you bet $5, your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets guaranteed. So make sure you check it out. Are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com.
John, I know you just did a great job kind of wrapping up your top 100, but I do want to start with you here in segment 3. I gave Nick and Joe the opportunity to start with our first 2 segments. So we're looking at where these teams are most improved from last year. And I think with all of the new that exists with the Jets, it makes for a really interesting conversation. So in your eyes, amidst the new, where are the Jets the most improved from 2024?
This can be fleeting with the New York Jets, but the biggest improvement is not at a position. It's not on this side of the ball, that side of the ball. It's in organizational stability. The Jets have not been a stable franchise the last couple of years. They geared everything around a short 2-year window with a 40-year-old quarterback. They spent time essentially treating Aaron Rodgers like he was an NBA star. It was like Rodgers had control over personnel decisions. They brought in a bunch of the receivers he wanted. They brought in Alan Lazard in 2023 along with Randall Cobb. Last year, they made a trade for Devontae Adams at a point where they were 2-4. And then Woody Johnson took over. Woody Johnson fired the head coach 5 games into the season. And Robert Saleh had a lot of issues. Robert Saleh did not have a great case for keeping his job. But to make that change 5 games into the season pretty much finished off any chance the Jets had of being successful in 2024, because Jeff Ulbrich was elevated to head coach. Ulbrich was also the defensive coordinator. He was trying to wear 2 hats at the same time. And in fairness to Ulbrich, he kind of he kind of needed to, because Saleh also brought a lot to the defensive side of the ball. So they already lost Saleh on defense. They couldn't really afford to lose Ulbrich, but Ulbrich was just stretched too thin. And Ulbrich also didn't really have a chance to think through how he would handle the head coaching job. He did not ask to be the head coach of the team. He did not ask to be promoted. Even basic things like how do you handle certain game situations? If Ulbrich had been hired in the offseason, he would have had a chance to think through these are how I'm going to use my timeouts, things along those lines. So with Aaron Glenn here, the coaching, there's at least like a distinct head coach and a distinct defensive coordinator. And I think organization wide, it's not all about one player anymore. It's about, at least for now, trying to build things the right way. With the Jets, this can be very fleeting. The Jets have a tendency of starting out with good intentions with a new head coach and GM, and then things change 2 years along the line when things, maybe aren't going according to plan. But right now, at least, it feels like the Jets are operating like a normal NFL franchise, and that's a big change from where we were a year ago.
Nick, same question to you. Where is this team most improved from 2024?
I mean, where do I start? They were so bad last year. Only one way to go. It was up. You could look at the head coach, just listening to John, some of the stuff with Saleh and how that all kind of fell apart. I don't think Gerard Mayo did one thing as a head coach that was good. I honestly don't think he did anything I can't tell you one thing he did that left a lasting impression, improved the football team. He was not good with timeout usage, end of halves, end of games, situational football, fourth down decisions, when to go, when not to go. He was not good with the media. He was not good holding the team accountable. So obviously Mike Vrabel is a massive upgrade over Gerard Mayo. And that's more to do with Mayo than it does with Vrabel, because I think almost anybody would have been an upgrade over Mayo with how bad he was last year. On the field, just a ton of turnover. I mean, you look at what they did in the offseason, they have brought in so many guys via free agency and then the draft that they had. But you can look at Harold Landry and Kayvon Chason. Kayvon Chason arguably has had the best camp of any Patriot. He ended the year last year with the Raiders on a high note, former first-round pick of the Jaguars, talented guy, never got enough out of his talent. He's had a tremendous camp, and he's now been moved up to the first unit opposite of Landry. He's taken snaps from Keon White. So those two guys brought in upgrades. Carlton Davis is a big one if he can stay healthy. He usually misses a month of the season every year, but they had Jonathan Jones last year as their two. Davis is just a huge upgrade there, and to put him opposite of Gonzalez as the second outside corner, I think makes the defense tough if they're healthy, like I mentioned earlier. Stephon Diggs is no longer a one. Nobody thinks he's a number one receiver, but he's a number one on this team, and he's a number one versus what they've had in the past. So crazy that he's back as early as he is from ACL. Can't believe that. He was ready and out there performing fully in these drills the first day of training camp, 8 months or so after having the surgery, which is kind of nuts when you compare it to other guys like Brandon Ayuk. So he's going to help out. Mac Hollins, kind of a sneaky fourth kind of wide receiver, big frame guy for Drake May. And then you could look at Milton Williams and the offensive line. I mean, again, they had so much turnover. I think they had a really good draft with, Will Campbell taking over for Darian Lowe. I mentioned Henderson earlier. Kyle Williams, I think, is going to be a good receiver by the middle of the year or so. So they've just upgraded a bunch of different places, Kyle.
Yeah, it really is incredible from the injury perspective. The Dolphins experienced that with James Daniels, who had an Achilles after week 4 and was cleared and out there for the start of training camp. And that's where I would start with Miami, where all of the conversation around not being physical enough as a football team, and where'd they invest all their marquee assets? Well, they gave James Daniels a 3-year contract in free agency to come in and play guard. I alluded to earlier some of the bets that they placed and how it really put training wheels on the offense. The interior offensive line play was catastrophic for the Dolphins last year. So they signed James Daniels. They trade up and draft Jonah Sabayanaya from Arizona to play the other guard spot. It's given them a lot more diversity as far as guys that are athletic enough to run their outside zone scheme, but also have the displacement ability to run some gap scheme and help create gaps. And there's been some spotlight on the Dolphins in the preseason about their short yardage opportunities that popped up against Chicago with the starting offense. But those failures came from the tight ends and wide receivers on the fringes for blocking. I think this interior offensive line for Miami is a big step forward from what it was last year. And then on the defensive side of the ball, it's Kenneth Grant with their first-round pick. It's Jordan Phillips as a fifth-round draft choice who looks like he could be a starting nose tackle for this team soon before long. They drafted Zeke Biggers in the 7th round as another 330-pound, long, kind of developmental base end type player, and looks like he's going to make this football team. So those trench investments on the interior for Miami, and then the chemistry experiment. There was a story that came out for The Athletic that spotlighted more than half of the Dolphins' fines for being late last year were from 5 individual players on the 53-man roster. And 4 of those 5 players are gone. The 5th player was Tyreek Hill, who has kind of had the come to football Jesus about his landscape as a player who had a down year and was coming off of an injury and is owed a lot of money and has no guaranteed money left after this year. So he's changed his tune. The Dolphins certainly cognitive. And as we alluded to, Tyreek's not in the position to be kind of the central main character of the Dolphins offense this upcoming year. So I think those are the 2 phases for Miami. Mike McDaniel subscribes in a player-led locker room. He needs to be better as a leader of this team, but they also chose selectively who were the players that were going to be at the forefront of the locker room, and they feel like they've got right players in those shoes as compared to highly paid, highly compensated, highly comfortable players that were used to doing things elsewhere and imposing that on what the Dolphins were trying to do last year. Joe, where the Bills is... You're going to tell us about the front 7, but man, I wish I was talking about getting better when I'm averaging 12 and a half wins over the last 5 years or so.
Well, listen, first of all, who was this receiver Nick was talking about? I'm unfamiliar with that guy.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, the Bills had a little bit more in the way of resources this offseason. They're pretty tight, right? They pushed the limits on cap space, but they were in a pretty good spot to be able to add. And they also had some additional draft capital courtesy of the Stephon Diggs trade to Houston. And so offensively, you're pretty much running it back. You added Josh Palmer at wide receiver, which I think is a big addition for the route running component that he adds to this Bills receiver core, something that I think was kind of missing with what they had last year. And that route running on the perimeter is going to matter a lot for this Bills offense and where they want to work the ball in the middle of the field, where Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid will be some players they really want to feature there. So it's continuity on offense, which is exciting based on what the offense proved last year. And now you add another receiver that has route running ability. But what the Bills had to get done this offseason was help the defense. The Bills defense last year could not get off the field on third downs. They were 29th in third down defense. It's pretty surprising. You don't really expect that from a McDermott defense, but they transitioned quite a bit of personnel last year. They also had a first-year defensive coordinator in Bobby Babich. And so this offseason was designed towards helping that unit, where you add to your D-line, signing Joey Bosa, signing Larry Ogunjobi, signing Michael Hoyt, who I think is going to be a major X factor for this unit. And then you bring back Tre'Davious White at corner, but then you go to the draft and you use your first 5 picks on defensive players, a corner and then 3 defensive linemen in a row. It's pretty clear what Brandon Beane wanted to get done. And certainly he's been outspoken about that as he was challenged about, what's up with the receivers? Why didn't you do more? And he had the very famous rant on WGR saying, defense is the problem. We wasn't scoring points. The Bills scored the most touchdowns in a season that they ever have in the history of the organization last year. It's how can they get better on defense after that transitional year? And that's where the investments went. They got to be better on third down. If they can maintain their takeaway prowess, which it's 12 years in a row now, Sean McDermott has had a top 10 defense in takeaways. If that can continue and then get off the ball on third downs, I think that'll be the area that they need to improve, and that's certainly where the investments were.
We are up against it last minute here. We're going to go quick around the horn. Joe, I'll start with you. 1 through 4 AFC East finished in 2025.
Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets.
John.
Bills, Patriots, Jets, Dolphins.
Nick.
Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets.
And I will drink my own Kool-Aid. I'll go Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets. And that's going to do it for our 2025 division preview here in the AFC East. We hope you enjoy all of these divisional previews for the Locked On Network. We appreciate you for tuning in, checking this out, and make sure you stay plugged in all season long. It is your teams every day. We don't just say it, we live it from the Locked On Network.